Hi Taurus, welcome to your July 2020 Astro Alchemy. It's Raina here, and this is a month where there's going to be earthy energy in the form of Saturn going back into Taurus, into Taurus, Saturn going back into Capricorn. And for you, Taurus, this is your ninth house. And so Saturn has briefly gone into the 10th house. But here's a perfect example of how it depends on the individual Taurian. And by the way, this is for sun and rising sign Taurus, okay? I have Taurus rising and I have the sun in Sagittarius. So they're totally different. And for my Taurus rising, it's a late degree. So my midheaven, my cusp of the 10th house, I believe is like 4 degrees of Saturn. So Saturn is not going to actually go into my 10th house this year. I think it's only going to get up to 1 degree at the end of 2020 when it finally goes back into Aquarius in December. But don't quote me on that. I think it's not going to go very far. And then starting in 2021, we're going to see more movement with Saturn in Aquarius. So it's not a given that if you are a Taurus, that Saturn has even gone into that 10th house. But I'm, doing this for the sake of, just trying to keep it as simple as possible. And I've probably already complicated it, so oh well. So going back to the 9th house means that Saturn, which Saturn has been there for a few years already, kind of doing its magic, if you want to call it that. It's really like, to me, in a lot of ways, Saturn in the 9th house is more like getting your head straight, getting your head together, getting your, it can be for those people who are interested in a spiritual career. It could have been a time of laying down foundation in training for becoming a spiritual teacher, like a yoga teacher, for instance. And if you are someone who has always dreamed of wanting, or maybe not always, but you wanted to work overseas, possibly for yourself as well, this might have been the time, because the 9th house can be long distance travel, and coupled with Saturn there, it can be kind of anchoring yourself in a foreign country for career matters, because Saturn is connected to career, rules the house of career. So perhaps that's true for some people, and whatever it is, what you want to do is, now that it's retrograding, you want to kind of bring it to a more personal level where you're going over old ground and seeing if you did all the right things. But I really believe that this is more philosophical than anything like working really hard at something, because Saturn is not going to go direct until late September. And that forward movement will indicate that you have, kind of gone over something, and now you're ready to move forward. So maybe it involves work while it's retrograding, but not forward, not necessarily going forward, kind of redoing something. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is more of a mental thing or a spiritual thing than actual reworking of something, because as I was noting in another video, sometimes when people are trying to push something forward, they don't see the results that they want, and they become even more deeply entrenched in making it happen, and they end up pushing it too much. And when a planet retrogrades, you might find that you're kind of letting go of whatever that is. And in this case, it can be the outward effort that you're putting into it. Saturn can be about working hard, really rolling up your sleeves and working hard. And there are times where that is absolutely essential. But what I notice sometimes that people do is they work hard and then they, now that I think about it, I could see Taurus doing this totally. Working hard, and when they don't see those results, even if they've been a little bit patient, they double down. And so especially if a Taurus has Mars in Taurus, you're like a steamroller. And, as a fixed sign, it's hard for you to kind of rein it in because you've already put it into motion. And you can just be like, okay, I'm going to do this until I get what I want. I'm going to, try to force the hand of the universe, if you will. And that approach doesn't work very well. So you have to, I don't know like the secret to this, but maybe it's just listening to your intuition of, how Kenny Rogers would say you have to know when to hold them and when to fold them. And sometimes people just don't want to fold. They don't, or at least, kind of like dial it back a little bit. So in any case, this is what can be happening for you now. In the same area, we have a lunar eclipse on July 5th at 13 degrees of Capricorn. But if you are somebody who is beyond the 13 degrees of Taurus, this is going to be like 14 to 29 degrees. This will actually not fall in the in that 9th house. It will fall in the 8th house. Yeah, that's very interesting. Let me see. This is another example of that as well, because I remember like looking on my own chart, and this is actually falling in my 7th house, I think. That's how, when you have the unequal house system, you can have a planet in multiple houses. And that didn't sound right, so I went and checked. It's actually going to be in my 9th house. So that's an interesting thing. So how does that work? Well, I guess because, yeah, and this is because the unequal house system is the most popular way of calculating a chart. I'm imagining from everything I've seen with other astrologers. So when I am doing this and talking about this is actually going to fall in your 8th house, that is still going to be the equal house system. So that has to really be emphasized. And so I probably shouldn't even talk about these things because it's going to be very confusing and still not accurate for everybody. But because I was like a little bit confused. Oh my gosh, this is falling in my 9th house, and yet I have a late degree of Taurus rising. Why isn't it in my 8th house? Well, it's the way that my houses are split up, I guess. And so for those people who have this in your 9th house, this is going to be a spiritual download for you in terms of maybe what life means to you. And that may seem like, that's boring, but really it can be the missing piece of a puzzle if you've been at a crossroads in your life. And this can really run the gamut of age. You could be like 22 graduating from high school, or maybe even 18 graduating from, 22 graduating from college, 18 graduating from high school. You could be on the brink of retirement. It can run the gamut. So a lot of times the type of things that we're doing on a daily basis are informed by our philosophy of life. And even if somebody's doing something they don't like to do, that is still part of their philosophy. They may not even know that it's their philosophy, but their philosophy may be, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make the most money possible. I want to provide well for my family, or I want to provide well for myself, or I want to be able to save as much money as possible. And security is a very important thing to them. For other people, happiness is the most important thing. And maybe if you've been through a period of great stress, this has been very confusing to you because you kind of teeter between two worlds. And so hopefully this will help you gain clarity. In the 8th house, this can be very emotional. A lunar eclipse is a powerful full moon, so that in and of itself can create a lot of emotion. As a matter of fact, the one in Sagittarius felt strangely emotional, and I didn't expect it to. But this one is definitely because it's in the 8th house for some Taurians. A lot of things that you don't really want to deal with can come to the surface, but it's a very purifying thing, a purging effect. And if you have the guts to kind of write it out, you never know how free you can become, because this may make you aware of how you really feel. This is like below the surface, the 8th house. And this can be even like secrets that are revealed, intimacy that is, the depths are plunged. And if you're doing this with a partner, it's like kind of like shadow work with a partner, and you can come to some great realizations. Okay, and what else is happening? It's a great time to break obsessions, addictions as well. On the 12th, Mercury goes direct at 5 degrees of Cancer. And where is Mercury in the chart for Taurus? Well, this is the 3rd house. This is the house that Mercury rules. So Mercury going retrograde in this house, it's like, yowza. That can, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's like kind of like if you're a Virgo or a Gemini, how do you handle Mercury retrogrades? Maybe it's actually better, but the 3rd house can be learning and teaching. And I was just watching another astrologer, and they were talking about business, and I never mentioned that. I really never mentioned about business matters, and I guess Mercury is connected to that, or sales and things. Definitely online, so online selling. So if you've had any kind of a slowdown, or it felt convoluted in some way, then you're moving forward with this, and this may be very welcome news. The 3rd house can be siblings and neighbors. Any kind of like misunderstandings can be cleared up in the coming weeks. And I think it'll be around the 30th before Mercury leaves its shadow. So just be aware of the lingering funkiness if it does play out that way for you. Sometimes Mercury retrogrades are barely noticeable by me, and sometimes they're, foobar situations. Okay. What else? So Mars is in Aries all month, and this is an area that is the 12th house for you, Taurus. So, wow. 12th house Aries. If you're listening in June, this will start on the 27th of the month. And, it's funny because I would say for practically any sign that Mars in Aries, oh, wow, this is going to be great because you're going to feel energized. And, energy is always good. But when you're a Taurus, and this is happening in the 12th house, you might feel like you can't do much of anything, because the 12th house is, it's like the saying, don't just do something, sit there. If you've ever heard that joke about meditation. And it's the nature of us as human beings to be physical. That's why we have physical bodies. But with with Mars and Aries, that can almost make us hyperactive, where we want to just constantly be in motion. But the 12th house is a contemplative house. It's not a house of a lot of stuff happening on a practical level. It can be past lives and all this stuff. So Mars there is not comfortable. Something to do physical with this transit is Hatha Yoga. Maybe that's the best time to start Hatha Yoga, because it's a spiritual practice that has a physical application. And anytime that you do Hatha Yoga, I don't know if a lot of people realize that Hatha Yoga is not about just being flexible. I'm sure that there's a lot of people who understand this. Hatha Yoga was created so that people could sit in meditation, which is a 12th house activity, sitting still and meditating. But I mean, beyond that, the asanas or postures actually can correspond to different organs of the body, different systems, and that can help to unblock certain areas, and that can be helpful for any kind of balance that you need on the physical level, not to mention the spiritual. So it has many good parts to it. Also, one thing that I want to suggest too, which I have done, although I haven't done it in a contemplative sense, is walking meditation. So basically, rather than just sitting still, if you feel antsy, but you still want to clear your mind, take a walk. But what I do is, I call them power walks, but it's not like the power walk where people act really goofy and move their arms, flap their arms around. It's more like a manifestation walk, where I'm thinking about the things that I want to manifest and getting into that good vibration, but also walking at the same time. I find that that is one of my most fun things to do while I'm walking. But another thing that you can do is, just meditation, where you're repeating a mantra in your mind, or if you have the ability, you can just say it out loud and walk and see if you can stop your thoughts while at the same time you have that rhythm of the physical movement. Okay, and then we have a black moon at 28 degrees of Cancer. I was thinking of that Creedence Clearwater song. I was thinking there's a black moon on... it's bad moon, not black moon. This is going to be in that third house. And what this is supposed to be, from what I have read, is the second new moon in a month. Because I knew that there were going to be two new moons in Cancer. So I figured there had to be a name for it. I looked it up. Sure enough, black moon. And it's supposed to be the beginning of a new cycle of about 2.5 years, because that's how long it'll be until the next black moon comes around. So anything that you try to manifest, because this is a new moon, in that third house, you may find that you're very successful. And remember that we've already had the solar eclipse at 0 degrees of Cancer. But for Taurus, this may have been more in your second house, because it was at 0 degrees. So, but regardless of where it is in your chart, they had said that the first new moon will be a false one, because it's like a false start, and that this is the real start. However, as I have noted in other videos in this series, I'm not so sure about that because this is a solar eclipse, the first one. And the black moon is the second new moon, but it's not a solar eclipse. And a solar eclipse is a very powerful new moon, so I don't see that as being a false start by any stretch of the imagination. So as far as I'm concerned, we're going to have two very powerful new moons within the span of a month in the sign of Cancer. So that's exciting. And this is coming, on the heels of Mercury going direct. So maybe if you were reworking something, a novel that you had written, or if you were involved in some kind of a training and maybe it got delayed, now you're full steam ahead. On the 22nd, the sun goes into Leo, and this is another fixed sign, so it's going to be in an angular house. In this case, we're talking about the 4th house of home and family, and this is, we're going to start to see domestic stuff, influences come your way going into August. Venus is going to take a little while to get there because Venus has been retrograding. And even though Venus is direct, she has some ground to make up. So in any case, I hope that you enjoyed this Taurus. And if you'd like a personal reading, the link to my website is below. Thank you for listening. Take care. Bye.